Hey, good morning. Happy Monday. We're here again. Just keeps coming up. You might as well get used to it and put a smile on your face because it ain't going away just because you don't like Monday. It comes around every week. So why are you starting off Monday with, it's Monday? Yeah, it is. It's an opportunity for new wins. That's what it is. Good morning, Lori. Hey, Sherry. Y'all, this is my first sip of coffee, and I've been up since 4:30. I have been waiting for that. I had to go live for work this morning, so I've been up early working, and that is my first sip. It hits hard. Oh, it's gold. Liquid gold. All right, guys, April 25th. David's justice as king, 2 Samuel 8:15 through 18. So David reigned over all of Israel and did what was just and right for all of his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was commander of the army. I can't see. I need some light up in here. That's better. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the royal historian. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were the priests. Seraiah was the court secretary. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was captain of the king's bodyguard. And David's sons served as priestly leaders. 1 Chronicles 18:14 through 17. So David reigned over all of Israel and did what was just and right for all of his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was commander of the army. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the royal historian. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were priests. Seraiah was the court secretary. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was captain of the king's bodyguard, and David's sons served as the king's chief assistant. The Levite clans, 1 Chronicles 6:16 through 30. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The descendants of Gershon included Libni and Shimei. The descendants of Kohath included Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. The descendants of Merari included Mali and Mushi. The following were the Levite clans, listed according to their ancestral descent. The descendants of Gershon included Libni, Jahath, Zimmah, Joah, Iddo, Zerah, and Jeatherai. The descendants of Kohath included Aminadab, Korah, Aser, Elkanah, Abiasaph, Aser, Tahath, Uriel, Uzziah, and Shaul. The descendants of Elkanah included Amasi, Ahimoth, Elkanah, Zophai, Nahath, Eliab, Jeraham, Elkanah, and Samuel. The sons of Samuel were Joel, the older, and Abijah, the second. The descendants of Merari included Mali, Libni, Shimei, Uzzah, Shemaiah, Haggai, and Asaiah. Aaron's descendants, 1 Chronicles 6:50 through 53. The descendants of Aaron were Eleazar, Phinehas, Abishua, Bucky, Uzi, Zerahiah, Meraioth, Amariah, Ahitub, Zadok, and Ahimaaz. The temple musicians, 1 Chronicles 6:31 through 48. David assigned the following men to lead the music at the house of the Lord. After the ark was placed there, they ministered with music at the tabernacle until Solomon built the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem. They carried out their work, following all the regulations handed down to them. These are the men who served along with their sons. Heman the musician was from the clan of Kohath. His genealogy was traced back through Joel, Samuel, Elkanah, Jeroham, Eliel, Toah, Zaph, Elkanah, Mahath, Amasi, Elkanah, Joel, Azariah, Zephaniah, Tahath, Aser, Abiasaph, Korah, Izhar, Kohath, Levi, and Israel. Heman's first assistant was Asaph from the clan of Gershon. Asaph's genealogy was traced back through Berechiah, Shimea, Michael, Besaiah, Malchijah, Ethni, Zerah, Adaiah, Ethan, Zimmah, Shammai, Jahath, Gershon, and Levi. Heman's second assistant was Ethan from the clan of Merari. Ethan's genealogy was traced back through Kishi, Abdi, Malach, Hashabiah, Amaziah, Hilkiah, Amzi, Bani, Shemer, Mali, Mushi, Merari, and Levi. Their fellow Levites were appointed to various tasks in the tabernacle, the house of God. David's kindness to Mephibosheth, 2 Samuel 9:1 through 13. One day, David asked, "Is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" He summoned a man from Ziba, who had been one of Saul's servants. "Are you Ziba?" the king asked. "Yes, sir, I am," Ziba replied. The king then asked him, "Is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show kindness to them." Ziba replied, "Yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. "In Lo-debar," Ziba told him, "at the home of Machir, son of Ammiel." So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephibosheth. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, "Greetings, Mephibosheth." Mephibosheth replied, "I am your servant." "Don't be afraid," David said, "and I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father, Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table." Mephibosheth bowed respectfully and exclaimed, "Who is your servant that you should show such kindness to a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and servants are to farm the land here for him to produce for your master's household. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will eat here at my table." Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Ziba replied, "Yes, my lord the king, I am your servant, and I will do all that you have commanded." And from that time on, Mephibosheth ate regularly at David's table, like one of the king's own sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah. From then on, all the members of Ziba's household were Mephibosheth's servants, and Mephibosheth, who was crippled in both feet, lived in Jerusalem and ate regularly at the king's table. David defeats the Ammonites, 2 Samuel 10, 1-19. Sometime after King Nahash of the Ammonites died and his son Hanun became king, David said, "I'm going to show loyalty to Hanun just as his father Nahash always showed loyalty to me." So David sent ambassadors to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. But when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commanders said to Hanun, their master, "Do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? No. David has sent them to spy out the city so they can come in and conquer it." So Hanun seized David's ambassadors and shaved off half of each of the man's beards, cut off their robes at the buttocks, and sent them back to David. Shame. Half a beard and butt cheeks sticking out. When David heard what happened, he sent messengers to tell the men, "Stay at Jericho until your beards grow out, and then come back," for they felt deep shame because of their appearance. When the people of Ammon realized how seriously they had angered David, they sent and hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from the lands of Beth-rehob and Zobah, 1,000 from the king of Makkah, and 12,000 from the land of Tob. When David heard about this, he sent Joab and all of his warriors to fight them. The Ammonite troops came out and drew up their battle lines at the entrance of the city gate, while the Arameans from Zobah and Rehob and the men from Tob and Makkah positioned themselves to fight in the open fields. When Joab saw that he would have to fight on both front and rear, he chose some of Israel's elite troops and placed them under his personal command to fight the Arameans in the field. He left the rest of the army under the command of his brother Abishai, who was to attack the Ammonites. "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then come over and help me," Joab told his brother. "And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I will come and help you. Be courageous. Let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. May the Lord's will be done." When Joab and his troops attacked, the Arameans began to run away. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans running, they ran from Abishai and retreated into the city. After the battle was over, Joab returned to Jerusalem. The Arameans now realized that they were no match for Israel. So when they regrouped, they were joined by additional Aramean troops summoned by Hadaezer from the other side of the Euphrates River. These troops arrived at Helam under the command of Shobek, the commander of Hadazer's forces. When David heard what was happening, he mobilized all of Israel, crossed the Jordan River, and led the army to Helam. The Arameans positioned themselves in battle formation and fought against David. But again, the Arameans fled from the Israelites. This time, David's forces killed 700 charioteers, 40,000 foot soldiers, including Shobek, the commander of their army. When all the kings allied with Hadaezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they surrendered to Israel and became their subjects. After that, the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites. 1 Chronicles 19, 1-19. Sometime after this, King Nahash of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun became king. David said, "I am going to show loyalty to Hanun because of his father, Nahash, has always showed loyalty to me." So David sent messengers to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. But when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commander said to Hanun, "Do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? No, David has sent them to spy out the land so they can come in and conquer it." So Hanun seized David's ambassadors and shaved them, cut off their robes at the buttocks, and sent them back to David in shame. When David heard what had happened to the men, he sent the messengers to tell them, "Stay at Jericho until your beards grow out, and then come back," for they all felt deep shame because of their appearance. When the people of Ammon realized how seriously they had angered David, Hanun and the Ammonites sent 75,000 pounds of silver to hire chariots and charioteers from Aram Naharaim, Aram, Makkah, and Zobah. They also hired 32,000 chariots and secured the support of the king of Makkah and his army. These forces camped at Medeba, where they were joined by the Ammonite troops that Hanun had recruited from his own towns. When David heard about this, he sent Joab and all of his warriors to fight them. The Ammonite troops came out and drew their battle lines at the front entrance of the city, while the other kings positioned themselves to fight in the open fields. When Joab saw that he would have to fight on both the front and the rear, he chose some of Israel's elite troops and placed them under his personal command to fight the Arameans in the fields. He left the rest of the army under the command of his brother Abishai, who was to attack the Ammonites. "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then come over here and help me," Joab told his brother. "And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I will help you. Be courageous. Let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. May the Lord's will be done." When Joab and his troops attacked, the Arameans began to run away. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans running, they also ran from Abishai and retreated into the city. Then Joab returned to Jerusalem. The Arameans now realized that they were no match for Israel, so they sent messengers and summoned additional Aramean troops from the other side of the Euphrates River. These troops were under the command of Shobak, the commander of Hadazer's forces. When David heard what was happening, he mobilized all of Israel, crossed the Jordan River, and positioned his troops in battle formation. Then David engaged the Arameans in battle, and they fought against him. But again, the Arameans fled from the Israelites. This time, David's forces killed 7,000 charioteers and 40,000 foot soldiers, including Shobak, the commander of their army. When Hadazer's allies saw this, that they had been defeated by Israel, they surrendered to David and became his subjects. After that, the Arameans were no longer willing to help the Ammonites. Okay. All right, I'll start again Monday. We are on day 14. We will be finishing this up this week and moving on to our next one. All right, emotional emptiness. 1 pound of fat is equivalent to 3,500 calories, which makes gaining or losing weight a pretty straightforward mathematical equation. In order to lose weight, we need to burn more calories than we consume, so our stored fat is burned off as fuel. While this is as true for me as the next person, there are things that make the prospect of losing weight a little more complicated for me. Somewhere, behind all the math, a less measurable force is at work within me. It takes on the form of emptiness or lack. As I trace my fingers across the timeline of my life, I can remember times when spiritual and emotional emptiness left me vulnerable. The shape of my lack was the absence of a biological father. It was as if someone held up a family photo and excised his form from our lives with laser-like precision. There we were, my mom, my sister, and me, with a hole that extended way deeper than an excised photograph. All of him was gone. His face that should have looked down upon his children with adoration, his arms that should have worked to provide for us, his feet that I should have been allowed to stand on while he danced around me in the den, his mind that should have shared the wisdom about why pet hamsters die and why boys sometimes break girls' hearts. He took with him so much more than he could ever have imagined. Those few suitcases and plastic crates didn't just contain boxers, ties, trophies, and dusty books. Somewhere, in between his Old Spice and his office files, were shattered pieces of a little girl's heart. Now, I'm not a big fan of pointing to hurts from my childhood and saying all my issues can be linked back to what other people did to me. At some point, I realized that everyone has hurt from their past, and everyone has the choice to either let those hurts continue to damage them or to allow forgiveness to pave the way to more compassion towards others. But the reality of my dad's abandonment created some unhealthy habits that lingered in my life. Emptiness has a way of demanding to be filled, and when I couldn't figure out how to fill what my heart was lacking, my stomach was more willing to offer a few suggestions. Food became a comfort I could turn on and off like a faucet. It was easy, it was available, and somehow, each time my heart felt a little empty, my stomach picked up on the cues and suggested I feed it instead. When I decided to get healthy with my eating, I started by praying a very simple prayer: unsettle me. During my unsettling process, I became aware of how emotional emptiness is a trigger for my eating. Much of this emotional emptiness stemmed back to that little girl coming home from school and being told, "Your daddy's gone." That one event was so huge, so draining, that it caused me to fill my mind with only negative memories of my dad. In my mind, he never loved me at all. And you know what? Maybe he didn't. But parking my mind only on negative thoughts about my dad left such a sadness in my heart when I thought about what never was. Sometimes I could brush off this sadness with a little sigh and a recitation of who I am in Christ, but other times it made me angry and defensive and hungry and deeply unsatisfied. I honestly never thought anything but sadness was possible with my dad. I'd reached out to him with a few phone calls and letters over the years, but no miraculous restoration ever took place. No beautiful ending where he suddenly knocks on my door and says, "I'm sorry." No long-lost note that finally made its way to me that read, "I have always loved you." Just unresolved hurt and this nagging feeling that his absence was partially due to me not being what he wished I would have been. That's a heavy weight for a little girl to carry. That's a heavy weight for even us big girls. Then one day God surprised me in the most unusual way. I'd been praying for God to make me aware of all those places I'd resigned as impossible to change. And while my dad still made no effort to connect with me, a sweet memory of him changed my dark perspective. Several winters ago, my family and I traveled to Vermont, where I woke up one morning to stare at what an overnight snowstorm brought us. I had never seen such snow in all my life, but what really caught my attention were the gigantic icicles hanging from the roofline. They were glorious. As I stared out at them, suddenly a memory of my dad flashed across the screen of my mind. I grew up in Florida, which meant no snow, ever. But I remember praying for snow, praying like a revival preacher at a tent meeting, I tell you. One night, the temperature dropped surprisingly low and the weatherman called for a freeze, which was a rare thing in our area. How tragic there was no precipitation. It was the one night that snow might have been possible. It broke my little snow bunny heart. But the next morning, I woke to the most amazing sight. Icicles everywhere, gleaming, dripping, hanging, light-reflecting, glorious icicles were all over the trees in our backyard. It was magical. We were the only house on the block with this grand winter display, because I was the only girl whose daddy thought to intentionally put sprinklers out on the one night it froze. I don't know where this memory had been hiding, but what a gift. Somewhere in the deep, mysterious, broken places of my dad's heart, there was an inkling of love. And while this certainly doesn't solve all the complications of being abandoned by my dad, it gives me a healthy thought to dwell on where he's concerned. One of those good thoughts the Bible tells us to think about. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Philippians 4:8. I like to call this parking my mind in a better spot. It's so easy to park our minds in a bad spot, but this is where pity parties are held, and we all know pity parties demand an abundance of high-calorie delights. Pity parties are also a cruel way to entertain, for they leave behind a deeper emptiness than we started with. And there I would sit with a guilt-ridden mind and a bloated stomach and an empty heart and a soul full of anger that my dad was continuing to hurt me even all these years later. But this icicle memory gave me a new place to park, a place where I could pursue truth rather than chocolate, a place where lovely could be something beside nachos and a Taco Bell drive-thru. And excellent could be my victorious response to turning to habits of such as prayer, reading scripture, and exercising away my stress rather than snacking away my emptiness. What about you? Do you have something from your past that causes emotional emptiness? As a first step towards healing, you can think of one good thing from this past situation, or maybe something good that has happened despite the pain from the event. If not, ask God to give you some good places to park your mind. Then, try walking through the following exercise based on Philippians 4:8. Here's how I did this with emptiness I felt about my dad. Whatever is true. My dad was broken. Only broken daddies leave their children. This isn't a reflection of me. It's simply a sad reflection of the choices he made. But it's also true that he had to reach past his brokenness that one night to set up the sprinklers for his little girl. And as small as this one act is, it was an act of love. Whatever is noble. I don't have to live as a child of a broken parent the rest of my life. I can live as a daughter of the King of Kings, who not only wants me, but has promised to never, ever leave me. As a matter of fact, the Bible promises me the Lord is near, Philippians 4:5, and the Lord was near the night of the sprinklers. Though my dad professed to be an atheist, I am convinced Jesus broke through his tough exterior that night and was near to him. Even if he didn't receive Jesus, my dad was near enough one night to see how beautiful love can be. I hope Dad remembers. Whatever is right. Everything right and good in this life has God's touch on it. It makes me smile to think there must have been 2 sets of fingerprints on that rusty yellow sprinkler that night. My biological daddy, who set it up and turned it on, but my heavenly daddy made sure the sprinkler was positioned just right to form icicles that froze the trees and warmed my heart. Whatever is pure. God has set eternity in the heart of every human being, Ecclesiastes 3:11. So even with all the darkness that seemed to surround my dad, some pure light of selflessness broke through and gave evidence of something good working within him. Warmth on a cold night, purity in the midst of messy sin, broken hearts and tainted lives. Whatever is lovely. God can take ugly and build lovely from it. From dust of the earth, he formed human beings. He healed a blind man by rubbing mud on the ailing man's eyes. That is a lovely quality about God. That lovely spilled over and helped my dad think of icicles. And in the backyard that never saw games of catch, a treehouse, or father-daughter talks, there was once a glorious display of lovely that only we had. Whatever is admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. I wouldn't say my dad was admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. But then again, maybe I should. Maybe like the icicles, there are other memories long forgotten and covered over by darkness of his cruel departure. In the end, my Lord has taken those shattered pieces of my heart and removed them from the boxes my daddy carried away that awful day. Piece by piece, God has created a mosaic in my heart, one of restoration, healing, and compassion. I am the person I am today in part because of the hurt I felt being left behind by my dad. I wouldn't have chosen that piece of my mosaic, but how good of God to place right beside the hurt of clear pieces of glass shaped like those warm icicles from so long ago. A memory I can think on, a memory that is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy, and filling. I realize what I've written here is but a first step in this process. Often these issues are big and complicated, and a bit like peeling back the layers of an onion. If you need more help, be honest with yourself and seek out a good Christian counselor. Often churches can recommend counselors in your area who base their advice on biblical truths. I wouldn't be where I am today without asking counselors to speak truth into my life. But for today, finding a gentle memory in the midst of a mess is a good start, a really good start, one worth looking for. So Dad, should you ever stumble upon these words, I pray you remember the night of the icicle wonder, for it is a common thread of hope that ties 2 very distant hearts together, and that makes me smile. Wow. That was a heartbreaker. Don't click on that link. Whatever that link from that person is, don't click on it. Oh my gosh, that was a tearjerker. I had a hard time holding it back in that. All right, you guys. Thanks for joining me this morning. That certainly... Yep. Thank you, Sarah. That is close to home. It's going to be close to home for a lot of people that listen to that. I think I have different hurts. We all have different hurts in our life. We all have different hurts. I was very blessed with a very loving father. So I can't imagine the pain she's going through or the pain she went through to get to where she is today. But there is some there's some really good truth in that about finding the beautiful memory, even if it's just small. So, okay, you guys, I'm sure you do, Sarah. I can't imagine, and that is hard. I'm sure you do. But you know what? He blessed the world with a lovely girl. He raised a beautiful girl that has so much love to give and loves people so much. So he blessed us with you, and I'm grateful for him for that. So, all right, you guys, I love you all. Have a blessed day today. I am going to do breakfast. What time is it? I'm going to do a super fast food prep this morning. Super duper fast food prep. I got to prep 3 things for my week, and I'm going to do them all real fast. I am ready to go. So I'm going to hang up from here, and I'm going to get live in like minutes. I love you all. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you back tomorrow for more devotions. Bye, guys.